We are back on Let's Have It Out. I'm Nomvula Mokonyane. Thank you once more for joining me. Mandisa Kanyile from the #Total Shutdown movement is my guest. Let's go to Lebu from Linden on the line. Hi Lebu, what's your question or comment?
Hi, I wanted to actually ask about the Me Too movement within political parties. We have seen it in society internationally. We have also seen it in NGOs where women were coming up and they were talking about how they have been silenced to report violence that happens in NGOs and in the communities and in different industries. We have not heard our political parties across the board have their own Me Too movement and allow young women who we know speak, including older women who were in camps serving with men, where we know that there were atrocities. We have not had a conversation within the ANC about how Fezeka was treated when mainly women were rallying and calling her a bitch and they were burning underwear outside of the court. So my question is, when is the Me Too campaign happening within political parties so that when we see you talking about these issues, we take you genuinely as partners who are not only looking at society externally, but also internally, and righting some of the wrongs that have happened, particularly for people like Fezeka, who had to die, and it took 4 young women again to stand up and make us remember Fezeka a few months before she died.
Thank you, Lebo. I think you'll recall that in South Africa, under the National Women's Coalition, a few years back, there was a campaign that was called Break the Silence. And that campaign was almost similar, and it's a campaign that is ongoing as it is with the Me Too campaign. I also am aware that it has also reached our own space in different political parties. But what is of importance is that it has to catch fire, and we all ensure that there is that support and appreciation that when people break the silence, they will not again be made victims for having broken the silence. And it is precisely because of that that we champion victim support, such as what we used to have. Mandisa just talked to me now about the latest developments about Ikaeletemba, something that I think we need to take up. We can't have the Tutuzela centers, Ikaeletemba shutting down. We need to make sure that all of us, we influence government through parliamentary processes and our constituencies to make sure that this becomes a continuous kind of conduct and behavior. It must go beyond just being a campaign that is a stop-start. Let's break the silence. Let's make sure that once the silence is broken, there is victim support from the time when you break the silence up to prosecution, including conviction that can actually happen effectively if the entire chain is actually linked. And that's exactly, I think, what is about what I want to raise with you, Mandisa, the issues about the gaps in the criminal justice system. What do you think we need to definitely do to deal with these gaps where you have a repeat offender of one and the same kind of crime, and in this crime, it will be crimes against women and children and other vulnerable groups?
I believe in believing the victim and actually not putting the victim on trial, but the perpetrator. That narrative needs to change. E.g. Denny Jordan, for example, and this goes back to the Me Too movement because most of those stories started coming out after that. If we have a narrative whereby the actual perpetrator needs to be the one to prove their innocence versus the victim having to be, it's in every other crime. If it's murder, if it's something else, you don't put the victim on trial. But with rape, you put the victim on trial. What were you wearing? Did you kiss him? Were you wet? What happened?
What time
was it? Were you suggestive in your actions? Instead of actually believing the victim and making the perpetrator the one who actually has to prove that they didn't do it. So just going back to the caller as well, I think some strong steps need to be taken in terms of, one, believing the victim, two, ensuring that there's victim support in the questions of Denny Jordan.
Which actually means you need to also look at your acts that govern prosecution, including the acts that have to do with crime and prosecution, so that then we deal with that in a case where somebody is being abused, don't actually create a secondary form of abuse. Are you therefore calling for the review of those laws, and is there any work that is being done out there by women's organizations to deal with these amendments? Because that has been a demand, but there has not been a realization. What might be the reason on that?
What might be the reason is lack of political will, because understand, Doguti, when you say, I mean, I know that in some countries the laws have changed around this, but in South Africa, where we're the rape capital of the world, if we say start believing the victim versus the perpetrator, our jails are going to be full. Yeah. So I think there's either a lack of resources or a lack of political will. What are we doing? We've definitely been pushing for this with civil society for quite some time and haven't been having our voices heard. It's one of the demands that is definitely going to be discussed at the summit on the 31st. But that narrative definitely needs to change in a country, as I said, that's the rape capital of the world, where victims are not believed. And if we as society create that narrative that actually they're doing something wrong by coming forward, they will continue to not be believed.
And that's it for this edition of Let's Have It Out. Keep the conversation going on social media. You can also use the hashtag LHIO. I am Nomvula Mokonyane. Thanks for watching and a very good night.